Good evening, everyone, and welcome to DX-5. This is our fifth evening of presentations and networking for creative professionals. We have a lot of different people in the room. We have educators and students. We have people from the video game industry, advertising, fashion, branding and graphic design, maybe others, transportation design, at least one. Yeah, it's great to see you here. Thanks for the great turnout. I'm Thomas Grové. I'm the founder of DX-Saigon. We're the organizers of this event, and I'm also going to be your first speaker tonight. Okay, our sponsors, thank you very much. We have DPI Center. They're a design school at the corner of Dien Bien Phu and Namki Koignya. They have students that do great work, and I'm always excited to check out their portfolios every 6 months or so. Gloops. Gloops is very exciting. You can tell by the lights. They're a mobile game developer, Japanese company, but they have a studio here in Vietnam. Glass A is a leading art outsourcing studio and game developer based here in Ho Chi Minh City. And finally, Centify. They're a global leader in financial crowd intelligence. That's might sound weird to you, but basically what they do is they're creating tools to collect information about how companies are trending online, and then they'll display that. Maybe you can make some investment decisions based on who's popular that day. And then our venue sponsor, Lush. This is our third time to do an event in Lush, and they treat us very well. So thank you for having us again. And then finally, this is the first time that we have a kind of professional video crew recording. In the past, it's always just been like my camcorder set up in the corner. Rice is a collaboration between Digipost and T-Frame. So thank you for your help tonight. Okay, how did we come up with our theme for this event? Well, I posted a poll on our Facebook group, Design Exchange Saigon, and social design was one of the top voted things. If in the future you will have a specific topic you're interested in, please vote. We have 8 people voting, so. Anyways, what is social design? That's not necessarily something I'd heard of before, but I had some guesses. My first guess was maybe it's like where you leverage your social graph to gain more traction for your application, like they do with social games. You can spam your friends with invites and stuff. Or maybe it was like designing a party, because that's a social thing, right? Making an event like this is kind of social design. But no, that's not what people meant at all. So I looked it up on Wikipedia. Social design is design that is mindful of the designer's role and responsibility in society, and the use of the design process to bring about social change. So maybe a more explicit way to state that would be socially conscientious design, or maybe socially responsible design. But all design has a social impact, and shouldn't we be considering all those things all the time anyways, right? So it's more interesting to ask whether or not the impact that it has is responsible. So that's how we came across our theme for this evening: design is responsible. So yes, we are responsible for staying within our clients' budgets, or not polluting the earth, or bringing about social change. But a lot of that is on the production side of things. And I want to focus my talk about how our final products affect our users. So not the design process, but the thing that you actually hold at the end of it, the artifact. If you're going to be making something anyways, why not make it good? Good in terms of usefulness, build quality, usability, and beauty. Oftentimes, all these things are sacrificed for cost. We're surrounded by cheap shit, planned obsolescence, objects of gimped usability, ugly objects, and dangerous objects. I don't think that any company or individual intentionally sets out to make something bad, but oftentimes as the designer on a team or within a company, it's your responsibility to fight for quality. And it might get you fired, right? But it's your responsibility. If you don't do it, the person who's got their eye on the bottom line is probably not going to be the one that does it. And I'd like to give you two examples of how design can improve user experience. This is the queue or the line for a typical amusement ride. Users can experience more than an hour of boredom for 5 minutes of excitement when they finally get to the attraction at the end. This is an illustration of the line for The Little Mermaid at Disney World. I've actually been in this line before, and it's better than the ride itself. Around every corner, there's something new to discover. It's visually interesting, and it's filled with many fun interactions. Like there's little holes you can look in and see some kind of animation, and it's really fun. Another example, this is a typical MRI machine. These things are terrifying for children. Something like 80% of children who have to get tested in one of these need to be put on sedative drugs so that they can go through the experience without moving too much and without freaking out too much. But a designer named Doug Ditz and his team were really bothered by that. In fact, he designed the original industrial design for a machine, and when he saw a girl just covered in tears, he was really moved, and he wanted to find a way around that. So they turned the entire experience into a fun adventure. They developed not only a series of aesthetics, and they have different themes, a pirate theme and underwater submarine theme, but also accompanying scenarios that create a complete experience. Now, instead of leaving in tears, children ask if they can come back and do it again tomorrow. So a huge success. But design doesn't have to be fantastical. Even practical would be an improvement in many cases. It's hard to describe what's right about design, but it's easy to point to what's wrong. These wrong things are called misfits by architect Christopher Alexander. This is a photo I took in an elevator not far from here. The button on the bottom is the one that calls the elevator to go up. Why? Right? It's clearly wrong. I've never seen it in any other elevator, right? You have to, as a designer, see that and remove it. You have to neutralize that bad effect. Here's another example. This emergency exit is cut off by a fence. Why? Why? So it's our responsibility as designers to remove or at least minimize these kinds of situations. Good design not only makes the world more usable, it also makes it safer. We can't just do things because it looks cool. We have to consider the explicit safety concerns, like things are just obviously dangerous. In most cases, you have to not make things that are just obviously dangerous. But responsible design isn't only about making things explicitly safe. It's also about avoiding miscommunication. The can on your left is butter, and the one on the right is furniture polish. One is food and the other one's poison. Sometimes illogical design can lead to danger as well. This is a typical road lane communication you might find in the United States, where I'm from. But this is one that I see many places in Saigon. So what happens if the person on the left goes straight and the person on the right turns left, right? That could be a problem. Fortunately for us here, people don't really look at what the sign says, they look at what's around them, right? But if people just obeyed what the sign says, we would be in trouble with signs like this. Okay, so that's the end of the general part of my presentation, and I want to move on to a case study. This is just a passion project that I was working on with our interns this summer. And I think it represents responsible design on a few levels. You might have taken our survey online. You may have seen an email about this from me or a post on Facebook. We're calling it the Athena project or the Athena jacket. So the first tool we used in this project was observation. The observation was that women in Vietnam wear hoodies when they're riding on motorbikes. But these, one, don't protect them in accidents. And two, they're probably hot in terms of temperature. And three, they're unattractive. I mean, this is one of the better looking ones, right? But they're not attractive. So the question is it possible to make a jacket that not only protects you from the sun, but also protects you from road rash, maybe even impacts, has great ventilation to keep you cool, and is fashionable? And can it be done affordably? So we don't really know, actually, the answer to this yet, but we're exploring this question. The second tool is empathy. This is my first serious motorbike accident. It is nothing life-threatening, but it was really painful. And it got me thinking a lot about motorbike safety in Vietnam. It looks kind of tough too, right? Yeah. Okay, so research. Two kinds of research, qualitative and quantitative. We've done both. The quantitative one is we sent out a survey. We put a survey on our website, and 166 people filled out the survey. And after collecting all the data, we wrote like formulas in Google spreadsheets to kind of find trends and correlations to see if there's anything meaningful in that data. And some interesting things came out, like 87% of our respondents said that motorbikes are their primary form of transportation. And the people who took the survey in Vietnamese, because you could choose English or Vietnamese, 90% of the people who took it in Vietnamese thought that motorbikes are safe. And 70% who took it in English thought they were safe. So that's kind of an interesting correlation. 80%, even more than 80% of all of our respondents have been injured. And this was some of our most important data, where they've been injured. You can kind of see the darker areas up here have been injured more times. And our plan of action is to place extra padding in the highest risk areas. We also asked about helmet usage and color preferences, but these kind of preferential things, it's really important to take that information with a grain of salt. And we've also engaged people in one-on-one conversations to get more qualitative data. Our fashion designer, she was an intern from who's studying in Denmark. She was here for the summer. She did a ton of sketches as part of our aesthetic exploration. And we had a few directions that we wanted to explore, but at some point, you just have to buckle down, pick one idea, and create your first prototype. But that's not as easy as it sounds. I don't know if it sounds easy. It's not easy. I knew through my research online that there's some materials that have really high abrasion resistance, others that are crap materials, some materials that will melt into your skin. So we have very, very specific material requirements for our jacket. And finding these in small quantities in Vietnam so you can make a prototype isn't easy. Like sometimes they have a minimum order of 1,000 meters, right? And we just need a little bit. So we looked at some of the markets to try to find materials that were close to the kind of texture or the thickness of the materials we think we're eventually going to be using, so that we can kind of try to construct the first jacket. So this is a fitting session just 2 days before our designer left Vietnam. And then finally a photo of the designer wearing the finished first prototype. It turned out way better than we expected, but it has very obvious misfits. So our next phase is going to be to adjust the patterns, adjust the materials, and create a second prototype. The second prototype will be given to maybe people in this audience to wear for a week, and we can get your feedback about what you like about it, what you don't like about it. And my guess is it's going to take at least 5 prototypes before we arrive at a version that we're confident in terms of build quality, comfort, fashion, effective protection, ventilation for the heat, and cost. Maybe even cost is something that will be hard to do. The good quality material that is actually protected isn't cheap. So this is the conclusion of my part of the presentation. If you have any questions, we have about 5 minutes allocated for questions. I guess we can raise the lights a little bit at this point. For this part of the presentation, get some more light in here. If anyone has a question, raise your hand, scream it out, I'll repeat it. You can also send me an email if you have any questions.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Where are you going to retail your clothes when it's done?
Where will we retail? I'm kind of thinking of an online, mostly online strategy. I mean, I'm not planning on making any money on it, so it's just a passion project. So I don't want to make 10,000 and then hopefully sell them. I'd rather get pre-orders and then just give them to the people that wanted them. And then if it happens to gain traction, if it happens to be successful, we can do a second run or something. Yeah, it's too hard to tell what the actual cost would end up being at this point. But from talking to like random people, the cost where it makes sense to do it for us financially is higher than what most people want to spend. I don't know, maybe like $100, you know. For ventilation, we're using a 3D mesh, kind of all down the sides of it, but it's still, you know, where exactly we put the ventilation might change. And the other important thing about the ventilation is a lot of these nylons are backed with plastic lamination, which makes them waterproof, but waterproof basically means not ventilated, right? So, and also that stuff will melt into your skin in an accident. So the version we made for the prototype, it has a laminated backing. It's the only thing we can find at the local markets. But
you did research showing what you thought were the most important areas and things to protect. How did you do research to see where consumers felt most vulnerable, and was there a difference? And if so...
Okay, the question is, we have like some data about what's actually vulnerable, but what about what the consumer perceives as being vulnerable, right? And the fact of the matter is, the consumer perceives sunlight to be what they're vulnerable to, not really abrasions. The one data point that's quite interesting is that, like, what I thought was going to be the highest was the elbows. That's where I've mostly been injured in my accidents. But the knees are like 70% of people who've been injured have been injured in the knees. So it's twice as much as people who've been injured in the elbows. I'm always wearing jeans when I ride, and I'm guessing that's part of it. Like any person wearing shorts or wearing a skirt is gonna be at higher risk for a knee injury. I also talked to a Vietnamese doctor who, orthopedic surgeon, who was like, be sure to protect the knees, which obviously a jacket's gonna have a hard time doing, but we might find like the wraparound skirts, maybe we can make a version of that that has padding and has abrasion resistant materials. Yeah. Okay, that is it for me. Thank you for your time.